everybody. Welcome to episode 77 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm with my main man, Bill at Super Dupaflex. Bill, how you doing?
And I am doing great. I got my second vaccination, feeling a little achy, but I'm super stoked for the show tonight. And it's an exciting time. Our guest just mentioned it feels like Christmas Eve. So, yeah, man, looking forward to our talk tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing good. And like you mentioned, we are ending our draft month with just a great guest. I don't have the words to even explain it. We got Garret Price at Dynasty Price. Garret, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You guys, I'm sure you guys had some great guests on, so you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel right before the draft. I'd expect you guys a little higher standard, try to get somebody quality right before the draft that knows what they're talking about, but I'll do my best.
Okay, great.
I will admit that we have had some great guests on, but I will not agree with the fact that we are scraping the bottom of the barrel.
So there we go.
You grind the film. You're on YouTube telling people what you're seeing. You're on there. Jared's on there, just educating the masses. A lot of people will say that they've watched highlight videos of an Anthony Schwartz and believe that they can break down what he's good at and what he's not good at. You actually put game film out there and actually do it. So, no, man, this is definitely not scraping the bottom of the barrel. Now, if anyone ever has me on, that's a little bit different. But having you on is a nice cherry to our draft cake that we've been building this April.
Enough of this modesty.
Yeah. So let's hit the news. Something that might shake up the draft, and maybe not in the first round, but day 2 or day 3 here is the Falcons are getting calls for Julio Jones. So just a quick kind of rapid fire. If Julio gets traded, where would you want to see him get traded to? Garret, we'll start with you.
Ooh, if he had to go anywhere, it would probably be Tennessee. I think I would like to see him go to Tennessee. I think him and AJ Brown would be pretty fun together, and we would see the best of Ryan Tannehill. That's for sure.
Bill, don't say the lines.
AJ Brown said he's totally for that, and we give up the number 11 if that were to happen. So that'd be pretty amazing. Man, I didn't even really think about where I'd want.
Bill just wants him traded anywhere.
Actually, I would like him in San Diego Los Angeles with the Chargers. That would be a pretty good pairing. And
the best for fantasy might be Arizona to go across from Nuke.
Oh dear God.
I was actually thinking Green Bay to go across from Devontae,
that'd be sick too.
I don't want to see that as life, man. Well, it matters for us this year.
I know you don't want to see it, Bill, but those two big boys in the cold just
that would be pretty impressive.
People around. Oh, I would not want to be an opposing corner trying to figure out who I have to try to stop and how I'm supposed to do it. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It could be a draft day deal, and it could make the draft very interesting.
What do you think they'd have to give up for him?
I mean, he's over 30. He has a pretty big contract. I mean, the next guy we're talking about, not as good at his position, but sort of in the same boat where it's a bigger contract for a skill level and has been around for a while. I mean, what, tops a day 2 pick? I mean, that's probably tops that you got to give up at this point for Julio. Because, I mean, it's going to be real interesting to see what the Falcons do at 4. I mean, they've been linked to Kyle Pitts. They've been linked to Trey Lance. They've been linked to every quarterback probably except for Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. So, who knows, and they're kind of, maybe they're not the start of the draft. Maybe 3 is with San Francisco because we don't know what they're doing, but they're one of those first teams where you're like, okay, they could trade, they could pick somebody, they could take Jamar Chase, if they have a Julio deal worked out. We have no idea where they're going. So, I mean, I would say probably a day 2 pick at the most, but
yeah.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, so the next one, talking about a guy who's not really good at his position that just got traded. Teddy Bridgewater gets traded to Denver. He actually got traded in a league of mine today for pennies. I think it was literal pennies that were traded. It was God, who's the backup running back in Tennessee? The guy who got drafted
Darrington
last year.
Evans.
Darrington Evans in the 213. That's what Teddy Bridgewater went for in a 14-team Superflex league, and I was like, I didn't have 4 quarterbacks. I would have made a better deal than that, but such is life. I'm fine with my quarterbacks, even though one of them is Deshaun Watson, and I'll let someone else pay pennies on that. But it seems like Carolina is also paying like 70% of his deal too, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So does this mean gloom and doom for Drew Lock, or do they just stick at 9 and take one of these guys that fall? Anybody can go first.
I don't know, man. It's going to be a weird situation because I don't think they're necessarily out of the running to get a quarterback, but I just don't know that any will be available at that point. Like, I think there's a real possibility that there's 5 gone before that point, which seems wild. Like, that seems absolutely crazy, but it's a really good class. And especially with how much people like Mac Jones, he was kind of always like the iffy one for a while. Now it seems to be Justin Fields, but it sounds like there's a lot of teams that are willing to jump up and snatch the talent that's there. So I don't think they do end up getting a quarterback. And then I think we have a little competition between Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. And I think it will probably be a true competition. And it'll probably be an annoying situation for fantasy owners because one will start 3 or 4 games and, they'll be 500 or something like that. And then they'll throw the other one in there. Like, as a Browns fan, for a long time, I've seen how this carousel works where you just shuffle one quarterback in and out. Like, I feel like that's probably going to be the case this year in Denver.
That's literally a competition I don't know if anyone wants to watch. I mean, Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
what,
like instead
what
of the
pick is Denver?
9.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, at least it gives them a little bit more flexibility. Like, they don't have to feel pressured to do anything, at least this year. If they want to trade up, they still can because it's not like they've given up a ton. Yeah, I think that, I think Lock's going to be given a little bit of a leash to start. And then if he's just still Drew Lock, then they'll probably go with Teddy. And because you can't go with Drew Lock again this year where he's just has zero, competition. And like, he still struggles with consistency and he's just got to work on that. And, unless Teddy's just night and day better and fits their system better, but I don't think he will. But, I guess we'll see. It'll be interesting to see.
And to everybody on the interwebs that is saying that Denver is out because now they have Teddy Bridgewater on quarterback in the first round, no, they are not. Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock does not give you enough confidence if, Trey
if the
Lance
right guy's there, you pull the trigger.
Exactly.
That's right.
Every
team should be doing that. If you're not happy with your quarterback, you should just be super aggressive at all times with quarterbacks.
Well, the Patriots took a quarterback like every year when they had Tom Brady. They took Jacoby Brissett, they took Jimmy Garoppolo, they took Ryan Mallett. They took guys. They were like, oh, there's a guy here. All right, let's take him. Like, are they going to take over for Tom Brady? Probably not, but we're still going to have a backup that we can trade probably for at least the pick we used on him. And they just cycled guys. Everyone, I agree with you, Bill, should be kind of doing the same thing. And talking about the Patriots, seems like the rumors and the stories are they're trying to get into the top 10 to grab Justin Fields. So it'll be interesting to see if he is around in the back half of that top 10 pick, those top 10 picks there. And if the Patriots are serious about this and they make the call and they trade with someone. A popular trade partner has been Denver at 7. I'm sorry, not Denver, Detroit at 7, Dallas at 10. I really think that Detroit is trading out. There's going to be a quarterback there at 7, I believe. So. And Detroit has shown their hand. They haven't really tried to hide anything. They're tanking. They're trying to get as many picks for 2022 and 2023 as humanly possible. I mean, they would probably trade that 7 pick, and you would probably have to give them the 15 this year and then a bunch of picks over the next 2 years, and they'd probably be fine with that, just because they're not even looking at 2021 as a viable year for themselves. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that the Pats actually trade up? Do they try to get a QB, or do they stand pat at 15?
Well, I think that it depends how arrogant they are, to think that they can find, they always seem like, oh, we can find a diamond in the rough. And, it's, if they finally have decided that that's not, the best option for quarterback, then I could see them finally kind of biting the bullet and doing something like that. I also saw something on Twitter within the last 2 hours where somebody claimed that they were working on a contract with Jimmy Garoppolo. So somebody else came back and said, no, that's not true. So, but it was a check mark that said it in the first place. And so I don't know how accurate that is, but that's also another option. If they don't trade up, maybe they can give up a later pick for Garoppolo and they feel comfortable with him in their system and that sort of thing. So I think they very well may trade up because they really like one particular quarterback. And maybe they do both. So then they end up with Cam and both of them. Who knows, but no, I don't think that's possible, likely, but I think it makes more sense with the rookie just because they do have Cam.
Well, and at this point too, I don't think their team's necessarily built to be a true contender.
Yeah.
The offense is a mess right now. They just lost their top offensive lineman in free agency. The defense should be better. There were, 2, 3, 4 guys on that defense that opted out due to the COVID season. So some of those guys will be back this season. So I expect the defense to be better. But even with Bill Belichick, I still don't know that there's enough pieces in place for them to really be a real threat. And Miami and Buffalo are clearly on the come up as well. So I think they would be much better served to just try to get a rookie. It's all a matter of value, though. Are they willing to pay the price to go from 15 inside the top 10? Because it's not going to be cheap, especially because they're probably getting the last quarterback available. So at that point, it's going to be an expensive price for anybody that wants to move up to get that last guy.
And I honestly think they're going to have some competition. I mean, I think Washington is going to be making calls. I think Chicago is going to be making calls. I don't know if they have or want to use the ammo it'll take to get up there and get QB4, QB5, but I think they're definitely going to have the interest. And we all know interest jacks up that price, even in fantasy. Hey, you want this guy? Oh, this guy over here wants this guy. All right, let the best deal win.
More.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think there are a lot of teams that can trade out of their picks. Starting with Atlanta and going to Detroit and Carolina, Denver, Dallas. I mean, all those teams in the top 10 could really trade out if there is a QB or QBs available to kind of be there to dangle. So it'll be interesting. Like we said, it's Christmas. We're trying to shake the boxes and see what each team is going to unwrap, but we don't know yet. We won't know till tomorrow. But so that's the news. We ran through it real quick. One more news point. The draft is tomorrow, but you probably don't need to know that. You probably already do. So that's all I'm going to say there. We got one here that trade out and take Trask in a second. If they want a back quarterback, that's fine too. They can do that. That's their prerogative. So,
what's your thoughts on Trask, Garrett?
Trask is really interesting. So I'm probably somewhere in the middle of the road because Trask seems to have like his believers, like his nest of believers. And then he has I would say probably the general masses thinks he's hot garbage. So I'm probably somewhere in between. I don't think he's as bad as his last game was. I think that's the tough part is people have that image stuck in their mind of that bowl game where Kadarius Toney was already out. Kyle Pitts was already out. Like all of these players decide not to play, threw 3 interceptions, just looked terrible. But I don't think he's as good as the games where he's putting up, 4 and 5 touchdowns in a game. And, he's not the most mobile guy. He's going to be more of a true pocket passer. He has an okay arm. I think he's a pretty intelligent kid from all reports. So I think he's okay, but I don't think he's a franchise difference maker. So at that point, I'm probably going with a guy with maybe a little more upside, like maybe wait a little while and take a Kellen Mond. It could, crash and burn just as easily as Trask could, but there's a little bit more of a ceiling there. Maybe there's more that you can work with. So that would be me, but I don't hate Trask, but I don't love Trask.
In my defense, I think he's just like lukewarm garbage. He's not hot garbage. I mean, there's
He's not that good.
Something there, but and Short Logic is in our listener league, so we know who he's going to be taking. He says Brady Scouting Report 2.0. Hey,
there you go.
You can have him. He's all yours. You won't get any resistance from us. So go ahead, take Kyle Trask, and good luck with that. So we're gonna move along now to what we saw on the timeline, and this first one here is from someone who's very smart, very intelligent. So we want to talk about it for a little bit. So this is from Garret Price at Dynasty Price. Why landing spot is vastly overrated in Dynasty fantasy football. And we just want you to spend a couple minutes talking about what you found when you kind of dug into there and, landing spots and guys that we have ended up loving and hating based on the fact that they were drafted to a certain team.
Yeah, I think that's something that people always want to do in theory. They always say, like, take best player available. But in reality, a lot of times we let the NFL draft influence us quite a bit. I think CEH was a great example last year. Originally, for most people, somewhere between running back 3 and 5 on most boards. NFL draft happens, he gets taken in the first round, which draft capital is part of the equation. But it was, I think, less to do with the first round draft capital. I think it was more to do with people seeing him go to the Chiefs and the passing game opportunity and all of that. And he soared up draft boards to where he was more or less the consensus 1-1 pick at the running or in 1 QB leagues. I was a big believer in Jonathan Taylor, and I thought he was a perfect fit for that scheme. But even me, he was not necessarily the top running back on my board before the draft. So even I succumbed a little bit to, now it worked out beautifully, but even I succumbed a little bit to that. Oh, do I like the landing spot? Do I, all of these things. And so I went back and I looked at the 2018 draft or 2019 draft just 2 years ago. We're looking at all of these different players. We're looking at Josh Jacobs. We're looking at AJ Brown. We're looking at DK Metcalf, all of these guys. There were plenty of hits in that class in the first 2 rounds, but there were also plenty of misses. But that wasn't the focus of my digging there. Really what my focus was, how much different is the landing spot of the first 2 round picks the night of the draft, or the weekend of the draft, I should say, versus today. And basically what I found were there were 11 wide receivers or running backs taken in the first 2 rounds. 7 of the 11 had drastically different situations than they had the night of the draft. Looking at guys like Paris Campbell. Andrew Luck retired. Most of the reason you loved Paris Campbell was because he's fast and Andrew Luck's throwing him the football. Well, he's still fast, but Andrew Luck's not throwing him the football anymore. We hated AJ Brown situation because that team only runs. Corey Davis is the number 1 there, and he's not even that old. Ryan Tannehill's a retread quarterback. Well, now we're looking at a quarterback that's really good in Ryan Tannehill, and Corey Davis isn't even there anymore. We also had Josh Jacobs. We loved that situation. It was, he was going there. He was going to be with Gruden, and Gruden's going to just, give him a million touches, both in the passing game and the running game. And there's really no competition there. Well, now there's competition in Kenyon Drake, and they've never really used him in the passing game. Oh, yeah, the offensive line went from a good offensive line to them just getting rid of everybody this offseason on the offensive line. So there's so many different things that changed for all of these players. There were a few that stayed relatively the same. DK Metcalf's basically in the same situation. Mecole Hardman, and there was one other guy. Oh, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. Those two guys, basically, their situation is virtually the same as it was before, but 7 and 11 were drastically different. There was another one, and Andy Isabella was a little bit different. Nuke wasn't there. Nuke is there now. So it was a little different, but nothing too drastic. He just more or less on his own didn't pan out. But that was kind of why I wanted to do that exercise, because I wanted to see, like, we put so much value into this is an incredible offensive line, or this is a great quarterback that he's going to, or that head coach's scheme is just perfect for that guy. So many different head coaching changes, so many different quarterback changes, so many different guys have moved in and out of those offensive lines and those offensive systems that most of those landing spots are irrelevant now. So I think that was kind of the point of me doing all of this digging, was to re-emphasize why the biggest piece of the puzzle, not necessarily the only, but significantly the biggest piece, really should be on their talent and talent alone.
So, quick question, and then we'll bounce on to the next one. But are there any CEHs that you kind of see this year that, like, if they get drafted to a good spot, are going to shoot up higher than they should, or maybe any Arthur Juan Brown? I just love his name. That you could see going to a bad situation and dropping, even though they're super talented.
Yeah, it's tough to know now who those guys are necessarily going to be until we see how the draft plays out. But, like, for the most part, like, Javonte Williams, if you like Javonte Williams, I don't think his landing spot is going to drastically change if he's going to be able to break tackles, if he's going to have good vision or not. Like, all those things. The only guy in the top end that is a little bit landing spot dependent to me is Travis Etienne, because of his specific skill set.
Yeah.
But even there, like, even though I think he's a perfect fit for an outside zone scheme because of the speed that he has, but yet he's a one-cut runner. He's not, like, making guys miss. It's more about his speed and acceleration. But that being said, once again, all those situations could change. All those guys could have new jobs. So that's the tough part. Like, even though I do think his year one production could be somewhat dependent on where he goes, we really just don't know what's going to happen with any of these teams in the long term. So, but ETN is definitely one where, could he be picked at the end of the first round? Absolutely. Could he fall to the end of the second, maybe even like first couple picks of the third round? Absolutely. Like, I'm having a really hard time gauging where his value is to the NFL because he's not a prototypical size for at the running back position. So how teams are going to value him, I think, will be really interesting. But all of these receivers too, you see it a lot with receivers. If, Devonta Smith ends up going to, a team that we don't like, all of a sudden people are going to fade him like crazy. As opposed to, well, now, Rashad Bateman went to Green Bay, so we love him.
Right.
Is that cool to know? Yeah, it's absolutely helpful. But for all we know, Aaron Rodgers breaks his leg and Jordan Love comes in and ends up being the franchise. Like, we don't know. We just don't know what's going to happen. Take the best guys available over anything else.
Yeah, and especially in the Green Bay situation, we said the same thing about MVS. We said the same thing about Alan Lazard. Like, they're the number 2. And listen, it's a whole bunch of Aaron Jones, and it was Jamal Williams. He's moved on to Bills Detroit Lions, and it was a whole bunch of Devontae Adams, and everybody else got a little taste, but there was no legitimate number 2 that we ever thought would be there, but they end up just kind of being bit players, and they kind of do their thing maybe once or twice a season that we can never predict. So. Yeah, I'm with you. Mine, I think, is like running back like 4 through 8. I think those guys, depending on where they end up, could raise or lower in value a lot, because I mean, you ask 10 people, you get 10 different ideas of who running back 4 through 8 is. So
for sure. And I will say that I think the later guys, I'm willing to factor that a little bit more, because sometimes you see like there's a path for them to at least play. And other times, like, they won't even get a chance to get on the field. Like, how is that even going to happen? So I do value landing spot a little bit more with like the day 3 guys than I do like the studs. Like the studs, I just don't care. Like, I just really don't care.
Yeah,
And it's so like immaterial, the difference between typically the skill of the backs in day 3 or whatever position in day 3. You can't tell the difference between them. It's just more of a, so it's very much just, does this person fit in that offense kind of thing, and hope pick them that way. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Show. So let's move on here. This next one is from the Dynasty Pollster at Dynasty Pollster. Which rookie wide receiver are you higher on? So Amari Rodgers or Nico Collins? And this was as close to a 50-50 poll as you could get. So I have an answer, Garrett, but you're going to have a better answer. So I'm going to let you go first.
I don't know about that.
Is it Amari or is it Nico Collins?
So Amari graded out a little bit better for me than Nico did. I think Amari is being slept on a little bit. He does a lot of things really well. I think he could be a very good slot receiver for a team. However, that is not necessarily how I would draft them because for me, and this is my personal strategy, but after I get about the midway point in the second round, I don't really care that much about floor anymore. I care about their ceiling. And I think Nico Collins has as high, if not higher ceiling than almost anybody in that range. And so because of that, I would be probably actually drafting Nico Collins above Amari Rodgers, just because at that point, I don't really care about the floor. I care more about the ceiling.
All right. And so go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, and that makes a lot of sense because, like, and then do you really want another mediocre wide receiver to try to pick between when you're doing your lineups? Right. You may as well pick the guy who's got the
chance for the boom.
Yeah.
I think this is the reason why you use your seconds and thirds to trade up to the top maybe 5 of that second round, because after that you're picking from a whole bunch of guys who are the same pretty much once you get past, like, in my opinion, 205, maybe 206 in a 12-team league. It's just kind of, what do you like more? You might have 2 guys the same because you're like, they're just guys. I actually, my answer was Amari Rodgers. So I thought that's the way you were going, Garrett, because I've listened to you talk about him. I've listened to you talk about your rating on him. I got thrown the Nico Collins curveball, but
like I said, my grade was actually higher for Amari. Like, he graded out as a better player, but just at the point that I think they'll likely go in the draft, I'll probably end up going Nico above him just because I think there's a higher ceiling.
And that's the thing, man. Once you get to that point in the draft, you're just like, you're kind of throwing darts. I mean, there are some later round guys that we could talk about, maybe off stream, like Austin Watkins and Jalen Darden, who I'm like in love with. And Bill's like, listen, once like 206 passes, like, you could just throw me a name. I'm probably going to be cool with it. So,
Man, this is the least prepared I've been for a draft season, and I can't tell you how long. So, like, yeah, life has just kind of pulled me away a little bit. So, actually, my question for you, Garrett, is, have you kind of set up tiers, like, for for your drafts, let's say?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel there's a point where it just drops off for you?
Yeah, I do think it is right around that midpoint in the second round where I think it's you're in a very different tier of players, especially. So the hardest part, I think, is going to be the running back position, because I do think there's those top 3 guys, and then I don't really, and I would be willing to take them all within the top 3 in a 1 QB league. But after that, I'm not even touching a running back until mid-second. Like, I'm not even and I like Gainwell. I like Kylan Hill. I like some of these guys, but I have no desire to touch them just because there's just so much risk involved. Maybe, like I mentioned, since they're later round guys, if it looks like they're going to at least have a chance to contend for a job, then maybe I'm interested a little bit higher. But still, there at that point, I'm rather taking, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'd rather take Tony. I'd rather take Pat Freiermuth. I'd rather take some of these guys that I feel much more confident in their ability to, be solid players. I graded them much higher. So yeah, that's where I think it kind of changes a lot for me, is that midpoint in the second round. And you guys alluded to it earlier. After that, there's, especially at the running back position, but even at the wide receiver position somewhat too, the difference between, Kylan Hill, Kenneth Gainwell, Michael Carter, Trey Sermon isn't huge. There's not a huge gap between all those guys. I have guys I like a little bit more. But you have a group of, 6, 7, 8 running backs there that are all pretty similar in value. And then same thing with the wide receiver position. After about the top 8 or 9, there's just a lot of, guys that either offer safe floors or safe ceiling or high ceilings. And you just kind of have to choose what's more of your flavor. Who would you rather risk it on? Who graded higher for you than did the general masses?
When you're saying the mid-second, that's in 1 QB, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that would be a little bit further back in super.
So about the end of the second for super flex.
Yep, it would be much closer to that. Yeah, 2-9, 2-10, 2-11 in there.
And I think you're going to end up, and this, I was wrong about this last year with Justin Herbert, but I think you're going to see a lot of trades go down in that second half of your rookie drafts, especially in Superflex, because people are going to want their guy. And, the problem is, like I said, 10 different people have 10 different rankings of, all of these second and third tier wide receivers, all of these second and third tier running backs. And it's like, well, I really like Kylan Hill. I don't know if the guy above me or the guy 2 picks in front of me likes him too. So, I better make a move up, because if that guy does take your Kylan Hill, and you're sitting there kind of pouting because you liked them and you didn't get them. So I have a feeling that maybe people are going to get a little bit more trade happy, because they're going to want their guys as opposed to wanting 3rd and 4th round picks that are, going to be your Austin Watkins and your Jalen Dardens of the world, and just kind of, maybe Ramon.
I do know that Darden is North Texas wide receiver, right?
Mean Green, let's go.
Yes. I got it. That's one thing. All right.
This might be the first thing in 77 episodes that I've actually educated myself on more than Bill. So I'm gonna take the victory lap on this when we get to
I'm glad. Finally. No,
Bill's been carrying me for a long time. So finally in our listener league where we co-own a team, I can help him out a little bit.
There you go.
I want to skip around here to one, because I like this question. This is from Zach Bonner. Zach, I hope I said your last name right. At Bonner FF. I really wish more fantasy leagues held later rookie drafts. It makes the NFL draft weekend so much more enjoyable when you don't have to immediately switch to fantasy drafting. Give us more time to live in the afterglow, my fellow commissioners. So I know our rookie draft is later. We're actually not starting ours until June.
Okay.
But Garrett, are you team like start it right away, or team like, hey, let's wait a few weeks and just enjoy the actual NFL draft?
This guy's not gonna like me, but I'm definitely team earlier draft, and the reason for it is I think it rewards the people that have done their homework. I think it rewards people that have really paid attention and have really looked into these players. If you're waiting till June, I still don't think June's bad, because it's still before training camp has really gotten going and preseason and all that. But by the time you get to August, where it's redraft season more or less, and you're doing your rookie drafts then, and that's when my home league does theirs, and it will never change. It will always be then. And I've just I live with that now. But at that point, everyone's had an opportunity to hear 800 different analysts tell them all the different things that have gone in preseason and who looks good and who doesn't, and all of those things. And so it gives everyone else kind of a chance to catch up. So if you want to reward the people that have done their homework, the earlier draft is the best way to do that. If you just don't care, then host it in July or August. Who cares? That's fine. But if your purpose of doing it is to reward those that are working hard, then you do it early.
And it's funny, Scott Connor, who's, way smarter than I'll ever be, kind of said the same thing. Hey, like, some of us have been grinding and kind of working towards this since, after the regular season was over, after the Super Bowl was over, or whatever the case may be, and like we're ready to go. Like we have our, we have our tiers, we have our rankings, we know
Yep.
what's what. The last bit of that puzzle is the actual NFL draft. So let's get it and go. I only commission one league, and we start the Saturday after the NFL draft. So,
Yep.
we're going to be there. We're going to, we're going to be making our picks. But someone brought up a good point. I can't remember, unfortunately, but they're like, hey, just get in more leagues then. Like, because, Bill is in like 15 or 20 leagues, and he's probably got rookie drafts from, well, he had one already, one pre-NFL draft, rookie draft, and he's probably got them until beginning of June or middle of June. So, just enter more leagues, and then you spread out that fun over, a month and a half.
Yep.
So, like, yeah, I mean, most of my leagues are like we start Monday after the draft or Wednesday after the draft. So, like, I would say of my, let's say, 20 leagues, 15, 16 of them are starting within 5 days of the draft ending. And so, like, I have a live draft we just started one in Michigan with just where we're going to do it in person. Probably cool. Not this year, but so my thought was with our listener league, there's just some people who aren't as this was their first dynasty league. So I figured maybe giving them a little bit more time to prepare and kind of hear the news and that sort of thing and kind of get an ADP, that'll help them a bit. And it just makes it more fun for everybody a little bit. It definitely doesn't reward the prepared, but, sometimes leagues aren't necessarily made to be uber competitive to start out. So,
yep.
But yeah, like I prefer them early because I'm in so many leagues, I get a feel for ADP and where people are stretching for a player. And so I know maybe if I want this player, I got to jump ahead of them or, it just, when you do a bunch of leagues and they're all around the same time early, and then you can hit inefficiencies that other people haven't seen yet, like those are the best. Cause then you feel like, oh man, I just, I got this pick so cheap because people haven't realized that this guy's, because they don't know the name, but he got drafted in like Kenny Galladay was a perfect example for me. Like nobody knew who Galladay was before the draft. And then he gets drafted, by the Lions reasonably early. And so sometimes draft capital does matter. And there's so many inefficiencies between draft picks and draft capital because a lot of people are using lists from pre-NFL draft. And so that's another advantage if you're prepared going into these drafts right after the draft.
I'll give some of the listeners that are in the chat, watch some Anthony Schwartz tape. Watch some. We talked about Amari Rodgers. We talked about Nico Collins. Watch those guys. Drew brings up a good point, though. He says too many safe leagues draft on Monday. He loves spreading it out a bit. And he says if you haven't prepared by May, I don't know that June makes that much of a difference. I don't know, though, because, you can get a lot of cramming done if you want to. I mean,
well, you can get ADPs after the fact, and that's the most important part. Like, you wouldn't have to do any work, and you could just pull that list up, and you'd at least have an idea. Whereas there's no ADP right after the NFL draft. So,
well, and I think too, there are guys like Garrett, there are guys like Ray Garvin who have been putting stuff out already. So maybe you didn't watch that before the draft, but now you're kind of like, all right, I know that Nico Collins went to. Trying to think of a good team for him to go to, the Giants, let's just say, for some reason. All right, like you can now look at what somebody like Garrett or somebody like Ray says about him. All right, do I think his skill set matches in well with what the Giants do or what the Giants are lacking, or is just Dave Gettleman being Dave Gettleman and just picking out of a hat and choosing a guy like? And I think knowing where players are going and kind of, we said earlier, situations change quickly, but, that extra time can allow you to go watch Garrett talk about these guys, watch a Ray Garvin talk about these guys, and maybe bone up a little bit, do a little cramming. Listen, I have a college degree just based on cramming for tests, 1 or 2 days before they come. So, sometimes you don't need an entire month. Sometimes you just need a week to say, all right, like, let me get a handful of guys, let me find, smart people that are talking about these guys, see what they're good at, see what they're not good at, see where they are, and make my own evaluations from there. So yeah, that month or that even 2 weeks could be invaluable to somebody who hasn't done their studying yet. But let's move on here. This is a good one because I want to get Garrett's point of view on this one. This is from Connor at Kanban NFL. You have 3 days, which is now really like less than a day, to sell James Robinson and cash out at max value. So do you see the Jaguars getting one of those top 3 guys? I think those are the only 3 guys that really hamper James Robinson's value, or do they, fill in a lot of the other needs that they have? I mean, they're getting quarterback at 101, but they also have a second first round pick. They obviously have another first round pick. They obviously have the 201. So, do you see them maybe taking one of the top 3 with that second first round pick or that very early day 2 pick?
So this is a great question, because me personally, I like James Robinson. I believe in James Robinson. I think he's a good player. I think he performed very well last year, and I have him on a few teams. However, I do not think it is bad advice ever to sell a running back that their situation is murky going into the draft. So I don't disagree with this. Like, I think if you can get the same value that you were getting at the end of the season or close to it for James Robinson, I'm totally fine with that. I have no idea if they end up going running back. I lean no. I think that they have plenty of other holes to fill, and I don't think that they're necessarily looking to add another running back. They did already sign Carlos Hyde, so he'll still be in the mix. Hopefully Armstead's recovered enough that he'll be back in the fold as a depth piece. So I don't think they necessarily need it, but you do always have that risk anytime there is a new coach that comes in a new regime. So I don't know. I don't think they will, but it still wouldn't be the most shocking thing to me. So the safer play, if you get decent value for him, is to sell James Robinson, and I have no problem with it.
So I brought this question up because, I don't know, a couple months ago, Bill, who's with me every week, and we had the guys from the Dynasty Theory podcast. By the way, we will be on their NFL Draft live stream, so check us out. We'll be on from 11 to 12. But when I told them I was a little skittish on James Robinson because I just couldn't believe that the room was going to stay Devine Ozigbo and Raquel Armstead, that they would obviously be upgrading. That I got a lot of jeers. I got a lot of not happiness about that. But I mean, so far, they've been right. It's really only been Carlos Hyde, which I think is obviously better than the 2 guys I previously mentioned, but it's not such an elite piece that you're scared yet about what James Robinson can do. But I feel like we were having very similar conversations about Philip Lindsay just a couple of years ago. And
Sure.
Now not only is he on that, he's not even on that team anymore. He's in Houston, which, Lord help him. And we're not talking about him kind of in the same breath we were after his rookie season, undrafted out of, was he University of Colorado, or is it Colorado's University of Colorado? And I kind of see the same thing. Unfortunately, UDFA running backs don't really get a long leash in the NFL, at least historically. And while I think James Robinson did very well last year, I think that just expecting him to do what he did last year on what I think will be a trimmed down snap percentage is a lot to ask. Well, Bill, put in your 2 cents. What do you think about this James Robinson take?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I feel like it's hard to trade a back like him right now. Like, I agree with Garrett saying, like, if you can get the value, then by all means. But I think that a lot of people are going to want to play the wait and see for the draft. So I think it's going to be hard to do that. So it's almost a matter of, do you want to just roll the dice, hope they don't take anybody, and then you can trade them after the fact, and you would get, that's where like the highest value is for him. Or at that point, you feel good about a situation and you roll with them, but yes. So I kind of agree. I agree with Garrett saying like, okay, yeah, if you can get even 90% of value, I'm okay doing that right now. But I mean, I think he's pretty safe this year. Just based on, I don't think they're going to want to spend on a running back early. But what if they take like somebody like Trey Sermon or something, and all of a sudden like everybody's freaking out because he's a lot of people's sleeper, and so, I mean, that could completely, even people overreact to draft picks all the time. They say, oh my God, like they drafted another player at that position, like, yeah, you're not going into the NFL season with 2 running backs. You gotta, the teams are looking to add depth. So this is just part of the game. So don't freak out about every roster move. And so if you're interested in him, wait till after the draft, or, wait till they sign somebody and then pick them up. But if you're looking to move them, I think personally, I'm just waiting till after the draft and hope they don't take somebody, with the top, like at least the first 3 rounds. And then I can move them.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm really kind of, the last couple of days I've shut down business. I'm kind of like, we're too close to the draft now. Like, yeah, someone sent me an offer today. Like, I would give up the 208 and they would give me the 213 and the 304 and a 4. I'm like, dude, first of all, I'm trying to trade up in the second, not down, so I definitely don't want to do that. But even if I did, I could probably get the same deal or better when I'm on the clock with that pick. So doing it now doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally, making any kind of trades really. And you guys nailed it on the head, because I don't think anyone outside the top 3 running backs affects James Robinson's value at all. If Trey Sermon gets drafted, if Chuba Hubbard or Ramondre Stevenson, those guys aren't doing it. Like, those guys aren't going to make me say, James Robinson is toast. He's not, it'll be Carlos Hyde, one of those probably day 3 or late day 2 running backs. All right, cool. Like, do that, whatever. James Robinson is still, I feel like there'll be a little dip in production, but not enough where you need to like panic sell them and get rid of them. So yeah, I'm kind of with you guys. Now, obviously, if one of those top 3 guys is there, yeah, hey, get him off your damn team. I mean, he's probably going to get a steep
Dude,
decline.
you wouldn't be able to get a 3rd round pick for him if one of those top 3 guys was drafted. That's just how the world works. Like, sure. Everybody's gonna so overreact to it, even though he could end up being 50% of the snap share.
Don't think though, if that does happen, that I won't be scooping up some James Robinson at very discount prices just to because I mean we said it before, we don't. Najee Harris, which is, I think, the most of Twitter's consensus, RB1 could go there. Dude, if he blows out a knee in training camp, guess what? It's the James Robinson show. And if you gave up James Robinson for a late 2nd or early 3rd or whatever you give him up for, well, you just gave up that running back for pennies, and he'll be on my team. And guess what? If he is never heard from in the league again, I mean, who did you draft with that pick? Maybe you luck out and you get somebody worth having, but most likely you probably shot it on your favorite dart throw. I mean, I've mentioned some of mine. If you listen to Garrett, he's mentioned some of his. Bill's keeping his close to the vest, but
make fun of the dumb guy.
But and how often do those guys work out? I mean, we talk about kind of sleepers and guys that no one is talking about every year, and maybe one out of the 20 guys we talk about actually pops, and the rest of those guys are just on your waiver wire the next season, and you go, oh, I remember I kind of like that guy a little bit, and he is, he's either, the sixth wide receiver on his depth chart, or he's not, he's not even in the league, or whatever the case may be. And, I'll still have James Robinson, who might be a backup running back, but hey, it's better than that. So,
quick question: would you guys prefer Aaron Jones or the 108 and 208?
Oh, let's put this up here. I didn't even see that. Good,
assuming it's super flex, right?
Yeah, we're going to assume it's super flex.
At this point with the new contract, I feel pretty decent about Aaron Jones. So I would probably take Aaron Jones unless I'm not a contender. If my team's not good, I'm not taking any running back on my team over the age of 25. So if I'm not a contender, I'll take the picks. But if I'm a contender, I think Aaron Jones has a clear path to being a top 7-8 running back, just like he has the past few seasons.
Yeah, and I'm going to make the assumption here, since he has the 108 and the 208, if this is a 12-team league, that he made the playoffs, maybe got bumped in the first round. Maybe he needs a piece or two. Aaron Jones is a very good piece to have. And, we have talked up this first round about what might be available at 108, in super flex. You might still be talking about, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, maybe Javonte Williams, depending. I know Garrett, he's your RB1.
He is. I'm a big Javonte guy.
But I think for a lot of people, he's probably RB3. But he might be sticking around if your league, plays off of the consensus, and Garrett has already traded away his first round pick, so he's not there sniping you for Javonte. But I mean, that could also be Travis Etienne. That could be Jalen Waddle. It just all depends. I think the first round, and I know you guys have mentioned this on the Nerd Herd before, you're going to look at, Bill's in a bunch of leagues. I'm in not as many as he is, but I'm in a few myself. I know, Garrett, you're in a bunch of leagues. All of your first rounds are going to look like vastly different. I mean, you're going to see, Trey Lance, for example, in a super flex go 111 in one league, and he's going to go 104 in another league. I mean, it's just, you're not going to know what to expect. And I mean, that kind of makes it fun because, I mean, besides Trevor Lawrence at 101, I don't know if you can really predict anything else in your rookie drafts past that. So, and Matt says he is contending. He just took over an orphan and needed a second running back for the playoff push. I don't know who your first running back is, but if Aaron Jones is your second running back, yeah, let's go. Trade those picks right now, and don't let the draft happen, and then we see, maybe there's a spot where, Devonta Smith goes and we don't like it. We're like, oh God, this is not a good spot. Or Jalen Waddle, or even, I mean, I think if Jamar Chase goes to Cincinnati at 5, I think some people are going to sour on him a little bit because they'll say he has to fight with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon is still around. So Barkley is his first running back. If you trade for Jones might actually be your first running back, but that's another story for another day. So, but yeah, I mean, Barkley and Jones, I think that's a good 1-2 punch. Make the trade if it's sitting in your box right now. Bill, are you telling them to make the trade?
So if it's super flex, I'm really hesitant to make that trade. I think, if it's one QB, absolutely, that's like a smash accept. I think that 108, I mean, especially depending on your other positions, like if you need a quarterback, you can still end up with a starting quarterback at 108 possibly. And if not, you're going to end up with the top wide receiver, top running back, or top tight end. And so I feel like I'm more hesitant to make that move because I'm always okay going into the season with one big running back, and I can make a move during the season to add another running back. And because there's going to be teams that fall by the wayside that still have an Aaron Jones on it that I could make a move for. And so I'd rather just grab the young guy that, people are excited about and worry about it later on once I, reach the season.
What about you, Garrett? You telling them to make this deal?
If he really truly does believe he's a contender, like, and when I say contender, I'm not saying, because you mentioned playoff push. If it's that borderline for me, then I'm not making that deal, because I need to see that I'm really that team that is one of the top two, at the very worst, top three teams on paper, at least as of today, to go ahead and make that move if that's my only hole. Otherwise, I do agree with Bill. I would rather sit back, let the value fall to me, and at that point, honestly, you might still be able to get my boy Javonte Williams there at 108. So I don't think that's a bad booty prize compared to getting an Aaron Jones. So it's just tougher to trust those running backs year one to give you the production that Aaron Jones will give you. So if you truly believe you can win it with one more running back, make the deal. If you're not sold or you're on the fence, I wouldn't do it.
So it's interesting because you guys said wait and maybe make the pick. I said make the trade because I like proven talent over hopes and dreams. But he said it's a super flex, and his QBs are Lamar, Rodgers, Hurts, and Winston. So no QB needs here.
Well, that still means the top five quarterbacks get taken. Now you have the top three position players there.
But I do think he has quarterback needs. I mean, we don't know if Winston is going to start. I mean, he could get.
No, but Lamar, Rodgers, and Hurts.
I mean, I know a lot of people love Jalen Hurts. I may be in the minority, but being right outside of Philadelphia and kind of watching him every week, I mean, can he run? 100%. That dude has boots and he can put them on the ground, but that throwing, man, if that throwing doesn't improve, I'm not talking about a little bit, I'm talking about he needs to improve a lot just to be okay. I mean, I don't think
quarterback still.
Right, but if one guy gets hurt, that's your super flex guy.
But you can trade for them. Like, I'm not worried about that, I guess, in a 12-teamer.
You're the Rocky. You go to the Rocky school of quarterbacking.
No, I mean, I'm fine having like two really good quarterbacks and then two question marks, and one being a starter. So like, I feel comfortable going into a season with that. So like, I mean, you and I we look at it differently, and that's the beauty of it. But like, I feel like even with it being super flex and you not needing a quarterback, you're going to end up getting a top 4 position player.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, because if he
hit us up, let us know what you do.
Yeah, that'll be fun, because if you do make the trade, it'll be fun seeing your team with Aaron Jones slotted in there, and if you decide to keep the picks, it'll be fun to see who you take at 108, because really 208 is whatever. I mean,
yeah, that's right at the border.
Yeah, 208 is like, we're talking about like who's your favorite guy in that range, and we touched on a couple, and at that point, who knows? I mean, we won't know till they get in the league and they do something. But you know what? I think we have hit the end of the show sheet. Oh, actually, you know what? Let's do this one real quick. Garrett, we talked before we came on, and you like to sit there and just take the whole NFL draft in. So do you have any traditions, any draft traditions that you do on the holiest of days, Thursday through Saturday?
You know what? I don't have any traditions necessarily. I know my buddy Jared Wackerly, we actually live very close. And so he's going to be coming over at least on night one, and we're going to grab some wings and that kind of stuff. But no, I don't necessarily have any traditions. In fact, most years I actually, and this is going to make me sound like a jerk. Like, I try to portray myself as a nice guy, but this is going to make me sound like a total jerk. But I usually don't like to talk to anybody like on draft night, like, because here's the thing, like, you invite people over, and unless you're like super nerdy like us and you've like delved into like all of the nooks and crannies of the draft and all of these players and all of their skills, like, you're going to have somebody that says like, well, you shouldn't draft Justin Fields because Ohio State quarterbacks always suck. And then I have to listen to that guy talk all night when I don't care about his opinion. I just want to like focus on what's happening on the draft and tweet out the stuff I want to tweet out. Like, I don't want to talk to you. So that's more the thing for me. So I'm okay with
every day. So I appreciate that.
So I'm okay with Jared coming over because we're in the same lane. Like we don't have to talk a bunch. We can just enjoy it. But that I know that makes me sound like a total douchebag. But
no,
listen,
I just don't want to talk to anybody.
I'm the same way. Day one, I will be here. I will be in my house. I invited people over one year, and this is literally the last time I did it because I was so fed up after the fact. It was the year Johnny Manziel was coming out. So Johnny Manziel is dropping. I live right outside of Philadelphia, and I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. So everyone goes, Jerry's going to take Johnny Manziel. Watch. I said, Jerry's not going to take Johnny Manziel. Like, I know Jerry. Jerry likes to make splash picks when, like, someone really falls, kind of like CD Lamb did last year. You know, he's already said this year he loves Kyle Pitts. Guess what? He loves Kyle Pitts if he falls to 10. He won't, but that's where he's not trading like future ones. Dallas is actually a very good drafting team, even though once they get guys on the field, that's a different story. But they actually draft well. But I was like listening to that, and then they took Zach Martin, and I was like, thank you. And then I think the Eagles were a few picks after that. And I was like, now it's my turn to give it back. I was like, maybe you guys take Johnny Manziel. And they were like, okay. You know.
Nope, my Browns did.
Yeah. Hey, listen.
Wah.
It was all the trek to get to Baker. You guys are a very nice team now on offense and defense. What are you going to do? Can you stay awake to, what are they, pick 22?
26.
26. Can you usually you're like top 10. You can bust out a Browns pick, no problem. You got to stay awake.
A lot of times we've traded a bunch of guys anyway, so we might have multiple picks in the top 10. No, first of all, it helps that I'm a late night guy, so I'll be up late anyway. But on top of that, on draft night, oh man, I'm staying until pick 32, and I'm praying somehow they figured out to start the second round right after. Like I'm ready to go, man. I will be up.
Yeah, my tradition used to be Pizza Hut pizza on draft day, but as I got older, Pizza Hut didn't treat me so well. So
it happens.
We've switched.
It sure does.
I do some wings like Garrett does. I do some pizza from a fine pizzeria in the area, and that's kind of a few beers, and that's my tradition. Bill, you got any traditions?
No, I mean, it's just crazy how much my timeline just said I'm watching draft day, like everybody's watching draft day. And then, that's actually why I included this on the show sheet, just because I was like, man, everybody's watching. I mean, I have draft day, so if I ever want to watch it, but like, I won't be watching it beforehand. I really don't have anything. Like I usually have it playing on the background, and I'll come over when the pick's being made to watch it, and while I'm doing other stuff. So, I think I'll be paying more attention to it because I'll be dead in bed because of the vaccination. So I'll just be laying there watching it all night. So, but that's not the worst thing that could happen, I guess.
Bill, you have a physical copy of draft day and you're not putting it on draft
I don't
day?
have a physical copy. It's digital. It's on the Fandango app.
Listen, you need a Fandango that movie on right before the draft starts. What do you the Browns?
Yeah, we'll see. If I'm laying in bed all day tomorrow, I might. So
the Browns just wheeling and dealing. Garrett was like, man, I wish the real NFL draft was like this. So we could get 2 seconds and then get 3 firsts, and then
it's wild, man. But the funny part is that movie, the cool part is like, I know there's definitely some cheesy points in the movie, but the cool part is like a lot of the radio guys and like all of that they use are like actual Cleveland, Ohio radio guys. And like, so like that made it feel a little more real for me.
Yeah, that's cool.
See, and the cool thing
it's still fun, and it is super cheesy and ridiculous, but it's, for most people like that are into all of this, we do still love it, even though it is that, it's like a guilty pleasure if everybody wasn't enjoying it,
Right.
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, Bill, you nailed it on the head. It's a guilty pleasure. It's just like, people are like, this isn't realistic. And it's like, I mean, most movies we watch aren't realistic. So
either is your fantasy football team. So don't worry about it. So
look, I mean, look, the Browns could have taken a linebacker at 1. We don't know. I mean, it's the Browns, but I mean, it's just fun.
Wouldn't be the weirdest thing we've done.
It's good for a laugh and just to kind of get you in that draft mood before you actually go to seeing Roger Goodell butcher names and just be real robotic. So hey, you know what? It's a good time. But on that note, Garret, I want to thank you for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. Tell everybody
Absolutely.
where you're at, what you're doing, and where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Dynasty Price. I missed the memo that I was supposed to put in my name there, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I'm at Dynasty Price on Twitter. I'm one of the co-owners and podcast hosts over at Dynasty Nerds, and yeah, all my work's there. A lot of stuff from doing the show to the Nerd Score, which is basically my tape grades, along with a few other people's tape grades in a composite form. The film room, the GM tool. There's all kinds of good stuff over there. So definitely go check it out.
Yeah, and that's all good stuff. I'm actually going to be getting the GM tool in the near future. Been meaning to do it for like the last couple of weeks, but I've just been so freaking busy that I haven't had a chance to do it. But that's on my to-do list, and I know my wife will be thrilled when I tell her, "Hey, listen, it's only $30 more. All right, that's all
there
it
you
is."
Go.
Like, she loves the amount I spend already. So, but it's all good. And it's only $30. We'll be fine. We'll make it through. But yeah, for sure. Go on the website if you haven't already. Like, take a look at their GM tool. Take a look at the Nerd Herd stuff, extra podcasts. Literally for $30, the stuff they pack in is insane. I mean, it's borderline illegal how much they pack in for $30. So if you're a fan of fantasy football, dynasty football, and getting a deal, there you go. I've hooked you up for today. Thank you to everybody in the chat, Matt, Short Logic, Lindsay Kennedy, everybody else. Listen, it makes it so much more fun when we have that interaction from the chat. We appreciate it. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit the bell, hit subscribe to let you know when we go live. If you're listening to us in podcast form, you can subscribe too, so you know when we drop it. And on that note, Bill, I think I hit everything. We're out of here.
Late.